statement. I now give the floor to the representative of the Syrian Arab Republic.
Thank you, Mr. President. In the name of my country, the Syrian Arab Republic, I would like to reiterate my expression of the pride we take in the presidency, on the Russian presidency of the Security Council this month. And we do believe that the coincidence of the announcement of the formation of the Constitutional Committee with your presidency of the Security Council again manifests and proves the key role of your country for laying the foundations of international peace and security and upholding the principles of international law and the UN Charter, especially the principles of sovereignty and the non-interference in domestic affairs of countries. Mr. President, the Syrian government, in close coordination with friends in Russia and Iran, and in collaboration with the Special Envoy of the Secretary General, Mr. Pedersen, managed to reach the achievement of forming the Constitutional Committee that was announced by His Excellency, the Secretary General of the United Nations, and also to agree on the terms of reference and rules of procedures of the Constitutional Committee by Syrian, which is Syrian-led and owned and away from any foreign intervention or interference, as was mentioned by Mr. Pedersen. This success in the establishment of the Constitutional Committee is a national and Syrian success par excellence, which has overcome all the impediments that were placed by the governments which are hostile to Syria to prolong the crisis. The determination by Syria to formulate a constitutional committee, which is closely followed by His Excellency, the President of the Republic, actually contributed to this national achievement of the Syrian people. I say that because all of us know what is the adage, how the adage goes, that victory has a lot of fathers, but defeat is an orphan. Given the fact that the Constitution is the supreme legislation that reflects the aspirations of any given people and which determines its national, political, economic, cultural and social visions, the national ownership of the Constitution is the cornerstone thereof and the foundation of it. Syrians and only Syrians own the exclusive right to discuss their national constitution and to adopt it with their own free will without any foreign interference or preconditions or extortion, which is pursued by the parties and the governments that place their stakes on the destabilization of Syria and the destruction and pillaging of her assets, violating her sovereignty and prejudicing her national independent resolve by investing in terrorism in all its political, military and economic forms. Mr. President, dear colleagues, Syria is as ancient as history itself. The tomb of our joint ancestor Abel is in the suburbs of Damascus, and the Syrian Agorate provided humanity the first alphabet in 1700 BC, and Emilius Babinian, the Syrian lawmaker who was born in Homs in 242 after Christ, and whose statue is hoisted so far in the Palace of Justice in Rome. And he was one of the 4 Syrian jurisprudents whose legislative provisions constitute 80% of the codes of Augustine. And the engineer Apollodor from Damascus, who was born in Damascus in the year 60, is one of the greatest architects in the history of humanity, and he designed the great bridge over the Danube River. Why am I saying that? I'm saying this for everybody to know that we are not newcomers. We are not novices when it comes to politics, to law, or to economy. Mr. President, the government in my country continues to participate in the Astana format as a framework that has yielded tangible results on the ground. And we have very positively received the outcomes of the National Dialogue Conference in Sochi, which is represented on the agreement on the establishment of the Constitutional Committee. And that has crystallized very clearly in the agreement with a special envoy on the TORs and rules of procedures of the Constitutional Committee, as we agreed on the regulatory principles thereof, the priority of which is the principle of full and strong commitment to the sovereignty and stability of the Syrian Republic, as well as the Syrian leadership and ownership of the political process. Meanwhile, no preconditions and no predestined conclusions are to be dictated on this committee. This committee is the master of her own modus operandi and decision, and no any given country, state, or any party, especially what is known as the small group, they may not intervene in the work of this committee, either directly or indirectly. We also agreed that no ultimata or timetables are to be imposed on the committee, and that every single movement should be studied and clear, as the constitution will determine the future of Syria for the coming generations. And Mr. Pedersen, the special envoy of the Secretary General, is very well cognizant of all these facts. We in the Arab Republic of Syria, we are keen on progress in the political process based on sound foundations that answer to the aspirations of the Syrian people, and the role of the special envoy to Syria will be represented in the facilitation of the work of the committee and the compromise between the parties thereof through his good offices if necessary, and he himself said the same in his briefing. Based on the foregoing, we reiterate that we stand ready to actively work with the friendly countries and the special envoy to launch this committee. We look forward to the visit that will be made by the special envoy to Damascus in a few days to coordinate with the Syrian state for the first meeting of the Constitutional Committee and to coordinate the steps necessary for this committee to come up with serious outcomes that answer to the aspirations of the Syrian people. Mr. President, at the time where the government of my country stands ready to positively engage in the work of this committee, we are very realistic and responsible, and we are cognizant of the fact that the political process is not a walk in the park. The memory of this council might echo what we and other member states were warning from. In this very same council, we were warning against unleashing some, or the hand of some, to tamper with the UN Charter and the principles of the international law, as was the case in Iraq and Libya. What we really need is to put off the ball of flame that some try to be rolling over our region for decades, to destabilize our region and to pillage its assets and displace its peoples. Notwithstanding the foregoing, we remain confident in our national capacities and potentials and the support of our friends and allies who wish only good for Syria and who refuse any foreign intervention therein and who insist on the Syrian-led and Syrian-owned political process. We look forward to working with honest national partners who genuinely seek to build the future of Syria and who are committed to the supreme interest of the Syrian people, the sovereignty of Syria and her territorial integrity. We do not want any untrue partners who are only trying to impose the agendas of their paymasters or any other interventionist conditions and who which are taken as a pretext for aggression. Yes, very clearly, we say that we are looking forward to work with true and honest national partners who would confront the policies and the practices of the infamous countries that are, until this very moment, trying to impose their will on the national Syrian decision by supporting terrorism and the separatist militias, which are known as Qasad or Syrian Democratic Forces, SDF, and using the platform of the Security Council to defame the Syrian government and imposing unilateral compulsory economic procedures on the Syrian people to impede reconstruction and to prevent the refugees and the Syrian displaced people from returning to their homes. And I would like to tell those who were crying on the Syrian civilians here and there, I would like to tell them that until this very moment, no MRI, the MRI machines and the CAT scans are not admitted in Syria. We asked the WHO to send us MRI devices and CAT scan devices. And they said that they cannot do that because there are certain influential countries and states that are object to sending these medical equipment. Medical equipment are not admitted in Syria. And these very same people are shedding the crocodile tears on the civilians. Mr. President, the success of any political process in Syria requires the end of the illegitimate presence of US, UK, French, and Turkish forces in the Syrian territories, and our faith in the importance of progress in the political process does not mean in any way whatsoever that we relinquish our right and our constitutional commitment to liberate every single inch of our territories from terrorism and the illegitimate military presence. And my country will continue to work in parallel on many tracks which are represented in the political solution, counterterrorism, and fighting the illegitimate foreign presence, as well as more national reconciliations, reconstruction of what was damaged by terrorism, and the international coalition, relying on all this on our very own potentials and the support of our true allies. However, what the Syrians need from you to support a serious and sustainable political solution is to support our efforts with our allies to fight terrorism and to dry up its financial and support sources, and to put an end to the unilateral compulsory economic procedures that are imposed by the United States, the EU, and other countries. In conclusion, I would like to draw the attention of all who supported the Constitutional Committee that the enemies of the settlement will never spare any option or non-scientific fiction to impede its work. This manifested itself in the circulation of hearsay and lies. The moment the committee was formed 2 days ago, the Syrian government was falsely accused of using chemical substance as weapons against its own people. We affirm that those who endeavor to impede the work of the Constitutional Committee should be held accountable. And in order for the committee's discussions to be fruitful, governments of the states notorious for their hostile practices and fabrications and who force themselves on the Syrian internal affairs should stop. We never falsely level an accusing finger against others. No sooner has the Secretary General sent his letter to you, contained in document S/2019/775, containing the terms of reference and rules of procedure of the Constitutional Committee, then new ideas and proposals were made which run counter to the agreement between the Syrian government and the Secretary General to overshadow this achievement even before the committee is launched. Thank you, Mr. President.
I thank the representative of the Syrian Arab Republic for his statement.